Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on any purchase over $10. See the description below for details. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to this special edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch, where today we're going to check on the price trends for Ravnica Allegiance cards now that the set's been out for about a week. Now, of course, last weekend we saw the cards in competitive play for the first time at the Star City Games Open, Star City Games Classic events. So definitely the results of those events have had an impact on prices, and you'll see that today. Quickly before we get started though, just a fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to support the channel. Our Patreon page is down there. You're also going to find links to products on Amazon, and Flipside Gaming still offering a promo code for our viewers. All of those are ways to help us keep making content for the channel, but whether you look at those links or not, thank you for just your viewership, and I appreciate each and every one of you. So let's get into it. Alright, we'll begin with the top 10 Ravnica Allegiance cards that have lost value this week. And as a whole, a lot of cards are losing value because a lot of packs are being opened this week. And any cards that underperformed this past weekend or maybe had a really high price point coming out of the pre-release time period, they are starting to stabilize now. Number 10 is Prime Speaker Vannifar, down 96 cents to $13.26. Really cool commander card. I do think this will lose some more value. It didn't really do anything in competitive standard week 1. We saw some BANT decks out there, but they weren't revolving around Prime Speaker Vannifar. They were doing different things, as you'll see once we get into the video a little bit. However, this is still a very good commander card, and I think the jury is still out on whether this will be a thing in Modern. I'm very skeptical, but there are Modern brews out there. We'll have to give it a little time to see if someone can break that code and figure it out. Number 9, Lavinia Azorius Renegade goes down $1.09 to $2. Not too surprising because we didn't really think this was something we would see in Standard. However, I do want to point out that it is already seeing play in vintage sideboards in a number of decks, actually. Maybe that's not too shocking because it feels like this card is definitely meant for a format like that. Will that alone make the price stabilize or go back up at any point? Don't really think so, at least not in the short term, just because there's going to be a lot of copies of this card out there. And not all that many people anymore play paper vintage, so I don't really see a mad rush for this or anything like that, but it is kind of interesting. Number 8 is Kaya Orzhov Usurper, down $1.12 to $6.59. Kind of as predicted, she didn't do a whole lot this weekend. I mean, there are some fringe decks on Magic Online trying to make her work, but for the most part, when it comes to the competitive scene, I don't know if she's going to get there at this point. Who knows, maybe down the road if there's more tools, it could change things, but at least for right now, she will continue to lose value. Number 7 is another Planeswalker, Dovin Grand Arbiter, going down $1.13 to $9.09 this week, and it's not too surprising to see the Planeswalkers lose value coming out of the pre-release time period. Typically, because a lot of casual players like to pick those up early, they tend to have high price points in the beginning, and then they will lose value unless they see some competitive play going forward. However, this card actually did see a little competitive play this weekend, and it looked pretty good in one deck. In the Star City Games Open, there was a deck that came in 5th place. It was an Esper midrange deck. It was running 2 of these in the main. Now, will this deck continue to do well? Maybe, maybe not. If it does, would 2 copies of this in the main be enough to stabilize this card? Probably not. I think $9 is still a high price point unless this shows up in another deck in the next week or two. So I do think it will still lose a little more value. But keep an eye on it. You never know what's going to happen with this Esper midrange deck going forward. Number 6, Judith the Scourge Diva, down $1.25 to $6.64. You know, much like Prime Speaker Vannifar, this card had a lot of expectations going into the weekend. Didn't really perform. Are there Rakdos Aristocrats and Mardu Aristocrats decks out there running this? Yeah, sure there are. But they didn't really perform very well in the competitive scene last weekend. That could change as people start to solve the format. We'll have to pay attention to it. But at least right now, I do think this is going to lose more value in the coming weeks. Good news, though, for Commander players that might want to pick up this card as well as the Prime Speaker. Number 5, Bedevil, goes down $1.36 to $5.34. I'm not real surprised about this one. I felt like it had a high price point going into the weekend. And now it's losing value. It's going to lose more before it stabilizes. Did it get into any standard decks? Yeah, it did. There was a Grixis control deck that came in 15th place at the Open, running 2 of these in the main, 1 in the side. So that was the best performance, really, we saw for the most part out of the card this weekend. However, like I was saying before, I just don't see a lot of people long-term using this over Lava Coil or using this over Vraska's Contempt because of the fact that those cards can exile, and that is important right now. I love the versatility that this does bring. It is a little color demanding, but that's not a huge deal in the right decks. If you're playing Rakdos or Mardu in today's decks, you're going to be fine with that. And again, unless those Rakdos and Mardu decks start doing a little bit better, this card does stand to lose a lot of value. Number 4, Spawn of Mayhem, down $1.57 to $12.99. Another card that's kind of a victim of Rakdos not doing a whole lot this weekend. Is it out there in these Rakdos mid-range decks? Sure, it is, but they didn't put up a good performance this weekend. That could change next weekend or the weekend after, so don't count this out quite yet, but it is losing a little bit of value. It is still at $13, so consider this. Even if the Rakdos deck does start to do better, if that's the only deck or maybe that deck and a variant of it running this card in the format, $13 is not going to be a price point that can maintain on a card like this. Furthermore, in a few weeks, guess what? Those guild kits come out, and one of these cards is going to be packaged in the Rakdos guild kit, so there's going to be a lot more supply hitting the marketplace. Don't spend $13 for this unless you need it to play with tomorrow. Just wait on this one. Number 3 is our last Planeswalker, Domri Chaosbringer, down $1.98 to $12. Actually, our most expensive Planeswalker going into this week, and stands to reason that it could lose the most value. And this one really is going to take a hit unless Gruul can get on the map in the next few weeks. A lot of people had high expectations for Gruul decks or Stompy decks of some kind running these colors, and many of those builds were running Domri during the pre-release time period when everybody was brewing, but it didn't really work out last weekend. Unless something changes, this card could go down quite a bit in the coming weeks. Number 2, Electro Dominance, down 201 to 554. So did this do anything crazy in Standard this weekend? No, it didn't. Did it do anything crazy in Modern this weekend? No, it didn't. But it is a little too early to tell for Modern because it's going to take a little time for Modern players to work this into a deck, practice with it, get to the point where they can bring it to a competitive tournament and do well with it. So don't count this card out at this point because it could definitely have a big weekend in the coming months. Now, if this card does do well in Modern, I do think it's going to be as part of a As Foretold Living End deck. That was a deck that had its moment in the sun, although a very short moment in the sun a number of months back. I do think Electro Dominance, though, could push that deck a little bit. Will it push it enough to make it a Tier 1 deck? Well, that is asking a lot. Time will tell. If it does, then this card could go up in value quite a bit over the next few months. If it doesn't, of course, it will lose more value and probably stabilize rather low. It is still a good Commander card, though. There's a lot of great interactions in Commander with this. Number 1, Angel of Grace, goes down 311 to 1072. This card was a little overvalued going into the first week, so I'm not surprised to see it lose a lot of value here. Is it good enough to see Standard play? Yes, as a matter of fact, it looked pretty good in a BAMP midrange deck, which came in second place at the Star City Games Open. That deck was running 4 of these in the main. It's just not the type of card that you're going to see crossover into a lot of different builds, though. If that build doesn't do well in the next week or two, well, this card could really bottom out. If it does well and actually gets better as time goes on, then okay, maybe it will stabilize around this $12, $10 price point. But at least for right now, I do think it's going to lose more value in the short term as packs get opened. Okay, let's move on to the top 8 Ravnica Allegiance cards that gained value this week. Now, there's only 8 on this list because once you get to 9 and 10, they're only moving by a few pennies. They're actually basic lands, as a matter of fact, so not really worth talking about that. They're just moving because prices are adjusting. But the top 8 cards actually all looked pretty good in tournament play last weekend. Number 8, Hallowed Fountain, up 20 cents to $7.70. So many of the decks in the top 8 were running this in their mana base. For example, at the Star City Games Open, second place, you had BAMP Midrange. Third place, Azorius Aggro. Fourth place, Esper Control. That was also 7th place. Fifth place, Esper Midrange. In the Star City Games Classic, you had Esper Control coming in first there. Second place, BAMP Nexus. Fourth place, Azorius Aggro. Fifth place, Esper Control. See where I'm going with this? A lot of people are going to need Hallowed Fountains. Now, this is just not true of Hallowed Fountain. We're going to see that a lot of people are going to be scrambling for these shock lands that just came out over the next few weeks as they're trying to build decks. This is the worst time to buy these particular lands. Wait a few weeks. If you don't need them for a deck tomorrow or for a tournament, give it a little time. These will settle down once everybody gets their copies. Number 7, Light Up the Stage. Here's an uncommon going up 25 cents to 183. Wow, okay, why is that? Well, it looked pretty good in Standard. In the Star City Games Open, there was a mono-red aggro deck that came in 10th place running 4 copies of this. There was a variant of that deck, which was Rakdos, that came in 19th place running 4 of these. So, yeah, no top 8 finishes, but pretty close. Now, where this gets really interesting, though, is when you look over to the Modern Classic last weekend. 5th place, Is It Phoenix running 2 of these in the main? 6th place was Burn running 4 of these in the main. So this card has already made a pretty big impact on Modern, which is definitely worth paying attention to. Now, since this isn't uncommon though, as packs get open, there's going to be a lot of copies of this flooding into the marketplace. Even if it is a successful card, I would expect it to settle down, start losing value very quickly. Number 6 is Terramander, another uncommon, going up 26 cents this time to 89 cents, and this card looked great in a couple standard builds too. Star City Games Open, 6th place, Is It Drake's deck had 4 of these in the main. 3rd place at the Classic, there was a mono blue aggro deck running 4 as well in their main. This is another card that's doing great, but again, another uncommon, so adjust expectations. This will definitely flatten out very quickly. Number 5 is Plaza of Harmony, up 35 cents to 93 cents. So, believe it or not, a Gate deck kind of got there. Didn't top 8 or anything like that, but it came in 20th place in the Star City Games Open. So, that did get a lot of people's attention. Gatebreaker Ram is one of the key cards in that deck. It also uses Hydroid Krasis, which of course is amazing no matter what deck you put it in. More on that in a few moments. But people are definitely intrigued if nothing else. Will it pan out and become a tier 1 deck this time around? Well, maybe, maybe not. But at least for right now, Plaza of Harmony, which of course was a 4 of in that deck, is running a little hot. Number 4, Godless Shrine, goes up 59 cents to 809. Another Shockland here, and there's still going to be one more on the list as a matter of fact. And no surprise, I mean, we've been talking about these Esper decks doing well. Esper Control, Esper Midrange were both pretty solid decks this weekend. This is a part of those mana bases. Number 3, Seraph of the Scales, up 96 cents to 893. Kind of the opposite story here of Angel of Grace. People didn't have confidence in this card because of the 3 toughness. Everybody thought it was just going to die to Lava Coil. I don't know, maybe that will happen as the weeks go on still, but at least for right now, it had a pretty good weekend. There were 3 copies of this in the main in the 5th place Esper Midrange deck at the Star City Games Open. Number 2, the last Shockland on our list, it's Breeding Pool, up $1.38 to $9.73. Wow, that's quite a jump for this card. So why is this? Well, again, another card that just feels like it's in every important mana base right now. Again, just look at the results of the Star City Games Open and the Classic. In the Open, Sultai Midrange came in 1st and 8th. Bant Midrange came in 2nd. In the Classic, we had a Bant Nexus deck coming in 2nd. Sultai Midrange came in 6th and 7th there. The Sultai Climb deck will run this as well. That came in 8th place. And there was even a copy of this in the Gates deck, so go figure. This card just kept showing up everywhere you looked. Number 1, of course, what else could it be? Hydroid Krasis, $11.54. It goes up this week to $34.73. Now, this card continues to spike. Don't spend this kind of money on the card unless you really, really need it for next weekend's tournament. Wait a little bit. You will start to see some snapback soon enough here from this huge price spike. But this card is very hot right now. Those Sultai Midrange decks run it. Like I said, that came in 1st and 8th in the Open. In the Classic, it came in 6th and 7th. The Sultai Climb decks will run this as well. The Simic Nexus deck, which didn't top 8 the Classic, but it did pretty well there too, will run this. I mentioned the Gates deck earlier. So again, another card that just feels amazing in a lot of different places. And those are the cards that become valuable. If they're seeing play in a lot of different decks, especially if it's a lot of different formats, we haven't seen that from this card yet, but give it time, who knows, then yes, you're going to have a pretty high price point attached to the card, at least for the time being. What's really cool about this card is the versatility. If you need it to beat down, it can beat down, but if you just need to draw cards and gain life if you're playing Control, hey, this thing can even get countered and still do that for you. That's pretty amazing. This will continue to be a card to watch, but like I said, this is a very, very high price point for a standard card when a lot of packs are being opened. Alright, with that being said, that is our look at Ravnica Allegiance for the week. Now, if you want to find out what else is happening in the world of Magic the Gathering prices, check out our regular Market Watch, which we do every Saturday, where we're going to talk about everything else outside of Ravnica Allegiance. But until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page, as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.